Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to look at the very interesting, kind of influential, pretty notable, but very short career of an American band from Cleveland, Ohio called the Raspberries. One of those bands that kind of falls into that category known as kind of power pop. Right? You know, we've heard numerous bands over the years who have been tagged with that kind of power pop classification of music, which is something that kind of came out, I think, as a result of kind of what the Beatles did, but really kind of started to come to fruition with bands like the Raspberries and Badfinger, and eventually like Cheap Trick, and we've had others since then, right? But this kind of band that like fuses hard driving pop music, or lush pop with hard driving rock and roll, hence kind of power pop, right? And the Raspberries did that quite well. They only in their heyday they released 4 albums. Okay, then we had a later release, more of like an EP, many years later, with one of the key members not in the band, but the rest of the band putting a couple songs together, which was pretty decent as well. That is the refreshed EP in 2000, which I'm not going to include in this ranking, but I will give a little mention here. It's not a bad. This is the EP they did in 2000 without Eric Carmen, a couple of the other original guys. I will say it pretty much keeps to the kind of feel of the original Raspberries type of material. The one song in particular that I do like from that album is Pop Teasers. Very cool song, very memorable. It's got nice crisp guitar licks in it, right? And those great soaring vocal hooks, memorable melodies. That's kind of like the main thing about the Raspberries is those multi-layered vocal harmonies, catchy hooks, right? And that's we've been talking a lot about bands lately who have got that kind of vocal thing going on, which in the summertime, hey, nothing wrong with listening to real catchy, breezy, hook-laden music, right? But the Raspberries actually kind of added a lot of different elements to their music, which is kind of what made them a little bit unique. You know, they were huge fans of the Beatles, big fans of the Stones, big fans of the Small Faces, and as we would hear later on in their, the last couple albums, you can hear like the presence of the Faces as well. Okay, so poppy, rocky, kind of a little bit of everything. The music could be lush, their music could be gritty and hard rocking, kind of combined a little bit of everything. So I'm going to rank these 4 albums in the order of my preference. I will say all 4 albums are pretty different from each other, which is kind of good. Maybe the last 2 are the most similar, but I think like the first 2 albums are like kind of almost like night and day from each other. But on all of them, we've got at least one hit single, okay, and some other, more semi-popular songs amidst some great deep tracks. So let's get started here. So my first pick here, my number 4, is going to be from 1972. It's actually their second album. It's called Fresh Raspberries. There's a picture of the guys in the band, right? Looking kind of modish, right? Sort of. Definitely have, like I said, their big influences were the Small Faces, the Who, and the Beatles, and kind of the way they kind of look there, it's kind of what they're going for. This is, to me, their pure power pop album. Out of any of their 4 records that they released early in their career, this is the one that the kind of the formula throughout the whole album is pretty consistent. It's got, one of their big hit singles, I Want to Be With You, a terrific song. Really catchy. Let's Pretend also was not quite as big of a hit, but a little more of a minor hit. Let's Pretend also really good. You got Nobody Knows, another strong track. You got the soaring pop of If You Change Your Mind. Okay. One thing about this album I will say, though, because all their other 3 albums have a good amount of like hard rock going on throughout them. Really not much of that going on here. This is more of kind of like just a good, bright, catchy, melodic power pop album. Not really rocking too much. Jangly guitars, big vocal harmonies, all that sort of stuff. Most of the songs on here are pretty damn catchy. A very pleasing album. Probably out of all the 4, this is the one. If you don't like anything too rockin', too heavy, all right, and you just want good radio-friendly pop music, that's what this one's all about. Okay. Next up, and there's probably a lot of people that are going to rank this one a little bit higher. I totally agree. I mean, the thing is, all 4 of these albums are very, very strong. That's what's difficult when you got a short catalog like this, where a lot of variety on the album, from album to album, but all very, very strong in their own right for their own reasons. And I think, like, the first album. So number 3 is going to be the Raspberries, their self-titled debut from 1972. Again, probably their most well-known album because it's got, obviously their most well-known hit on it. And I think this is the album that's heavily influenced by the Beatles. I mean, the specter of the Beatles is all over this album. So it's got, the hard rock hit Go All the Way, which is one of my favorite 70s pop rock tunes of all time. It's just a great, great radio song. It's got the heavy, chunky guitar riff. It's got the soaring vocal harmonies. Eric Carmen, great singer, great songwriter. Just a fascinating, fascinating song that just never gets old. But, beyond that, you've got a handful of kind of crisp hard rockers. You've got like Rock and Roll Mama and Get It Movin', but it's mixed with more of that kind of like lush pop stuff. Again, with some of the Beatles late period stuff. They're more kind of mellower stuff all over here. Like I Saw the Light, Waiting, the gorgeous I Don't Want to Say Goodbye. While, you have a song like I Can Remember, which is the last song on the album, shows the little more adventurous side to their songwriting. Okay, you got strings and piano, the big multi-part vocals, some hard rock guitar elements. Kind of almost like they're one like kind of prog rock track, so to speak. So really good album, very varied. And it would just kind of like plant the seeds of some of the things to come, right? But it's just interesting how like this album really doesn't sound much like this album, and that's kind of like how they went from album to album. All right, number 2 is going to be their last album from 1974 called Starting Over. And before I go to this, let me talk a little bit about the lineup here. I wanted to do that at the beginning. So you got Eric Carmen, all right, of course, on lead and backing vocals, piano. He did play some bass guitar throughout their catalog. Wally Bryson, lead guitar, lead and backing vocals. Okay, Dave Smalley on rhythm guitar, bass guitar, lead and backing vocals. You got Jim Bonfranti on drums and backing vocals on the earlier albums, and then coming in for this album, you got Michael McBride on drums. Also, Scott McCarl would join the band on bass guitar and vocals for this particular album here. So, a strong album. So here, with this album and the one that came right before it, you see that we've all seen the Raspberries move from that kind of Beatles-inflected kind of dreamy pop sheen type stuff of the first 2 albums to much more of a kind of like late 60s Who, late 60s, early 70s The Who. They were big fans of The Who, as well as the Faces. They move away from kind of the more pop-oriented stuff of the Small Faces, the more kind of psychedelic pop of the Small Faces, to like the Faces. So the Rod Stewart-led band, Rod Stewart and Ron Wood and company, right? Just real gritty, bluesy, boogie type stuff, and a good amount of this album is kind of saturated with that kind of stuff, all right? This album also has perhaps, it ranks right up there with Go All the Way, Overnight Sensation, a great single. That is probably on this album, their most power pop-ish tune. And actually, kind of, you listen to Overnight Sensation and some of their earlier stuff too on the early albums, and you gotta wonder if Queen was listening to these guys before they actually started recording. Because I hear, especially on the multi-layered vocal harmonies and things like that, I hear stuff that we would later hear on a lot of Queen albums. So you gotta wonder if Queen was listening to this album or these guys in general. So, but Overnight Sensation, great song. You've got Play On, Cry, and Party's Over. Again, these are kind of, raunchy rock and roll boogie songs. Again, I mentioned the Faces because I hear a lot of the Faces on these albums. Not vocally, obviously, but more in the arrangements. I Don't Know What I Want recalls like the early Who. Okay, got the big ringing guitars and the crashing drums all over the place. Really, really cool song. Then you got Cruising Music, I Can Hardly Believe You're Mine, and then the soaring pop of the title track, Starting Over. So very, very strong album, I think. Very fun album. Again, this album didn't do as well as the other 3. Sadly, I don't understand why, because it's quite, quite good. And then my favorite album by the Raspberries, my number 1, is actually Side 3, released in 1974. So this was their 3rd album. See, there you go. Finally got the Raspberries themselves making an appearance on the cover, right? So this is a really, really strong album, start to finish. It's got the hook-laden hard rock anthem Tonight, another hit for the band. Just, man, what a chorus on that song. Just a really, really great hard rock and pop song. Okay, you got the fairly heavy Making It Easy, which again has a big Who feel, as well as maybe a little bit of the Stones. Okay, On the Beach also rocks out, but pretty catchy with a great Eric Carmen vocal. Okay, lots of backing vocals. Hard to Get Over a Heartbreak also is also pretty rocking. What else we got here? I'm a Rocker. All right, also has that bluesy boogie feel to it. All right, Ecstasy has got big, like kind of Who and Townsend sounding guitar chords, right? Great hooks, good pop with lots of rock elements, and Money Down, which has some really crunchy riffs from Wally Bryson. I think could be perhaps their heaviest song. So yeah, there you go. A lot of good stuff on here. Just a really, really cool band that I think just wrote really good, compact, catchy songs that there was something that came up on a show I did the other day with Jack Toledano and Stephen Reed. We were talking about like some of the early Kiss catalog and how a lot of those early Kiss songs are very short, compact, to the point where nothing is wasted, right? No long guitar solos, none of that stuff. It's just like kind of perfectly constructed, 2.5, 3.5 minutes tops, over and done. And that's kind of that's the deal with these guys. I mean, almost all, there's obviously occasionally go for like a longer track, but for the most part, these are all good short rock songs, pop rock songs, power pop songs, whatever we want to call them. Plenty of great instrumentation and fantastic vocals and melodies and things like that. So there you have it. So my number 1 is going to be Side 3. My number 2 is going to be Starting Over. My number 3 is going to be the Raspberries, and my number 4 pick is going to be Fresh Raspberries. So there you have it. If you have not listened to the Raspberries, other than those couple hits I mentioned, I would check out this catalog. Pretty damn good, right? I like these guys. A very, very cool band. And I know a lot of you are going to be asking now, well, Pete, when are you going to do the catalog of Badfinger? I might just do that. It may be a little while. I think I have like 80% of all the Badfinger stuff, so I probably just have to familiarize myself with those couple others that I'm missing. But another pretty cool band. All right, so I like this kind of power pop thing, even though there's not a ton of bands that kind of infiltrate this sort of subgenre of rock music, but pretty cool, I think. So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. More stuff coming up today. We've got an interview with 2 of the guys, founding members of Glass Hammer, Steve Babb and Fred Schendel. That's coming up this afternoon. This morning, we got a few other things happening here. Got some new review shows coming up, so you want to check those out. New albums from Horizont and Soft Machine, as well as I'm going to review Martin Popoff's Anthem book, his Rush in the 70s book. Just finished that yesterday and ready to talk about it. So we'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.